Hey there, movie lovers. Welcome back to Fade to Fact, the channel where we dig up the wildest behind-the-scenes stories and hidden gems from cinema history. Today, we're diving into Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981, the film that introduced us to Indiana Jones, a fedora-wearing archaeologist who became one of Hollywood's greatest icons. Back in the late 72nd, Steven Spielberg dreamed of making a James Bond movie. George Lucas, fresh off Star Wars, had another idea, a throwback adventure hero inspired by the pulp serials of the 1932nd. That idea turned into Indiana Jones, and when Raiders hit theaters in 1981, it was an instant phenomenon. Audiences loved it, critics raved, and Harrison Ford suddenly had another legendary role to add alongside Han Solo. The movie scored 4 Oscars, massive box office success, and a permanent spot in pop culture. But as with any classic, what happened behind the camera is just as fascinating as what we saw on screen. From casting close calls and wild stunts to clever tricks and pure improvisation, Raiders is filled with untold stories waiting to be unearthed. So grab your hat and whip, and join me as we uncover 20 things you never knew about Raiders of the Lost Ark. 1. Indiana Jones was almost played by Tom Selleck. Believe it or not, Harrison Ford wasn't the first choice for Indiana Jones. The role was originally offered to Tom Selleck, who even shot a screen test in the fedora and leather jacket. However, Selleck was locked into his television contract for Magnum P.I. and had to pass on the project. As fate would have it, Harrison Ford was available, and Spielberg pushed Lucas to give him the role. Looking back, it's nearly impossible to picture anyone else as Indy, but somewhere out there, an alternate universe has Selleck cracking that whip. 2. The Boulder Chase was inspired by old serials. The legendary opening scene where Indy outruns a giant rolling boulder wasn't just made up on the spot. Spielberg and Lucas wanted to capture the over-the-top thrills of 1932nd adventure serials. The boulder itself was a fiberglass and resin prop that weighed about 300 pounds, mounted on a track so it rolled smoothly. Ford actually sprinted in front of it, doing multiple takes to sell the danger. That sequence set the tone for the entire film: fast-paced, dangerous, and just a little bit unbelievable. 3. Harrison Ford did most of his own stunts. Ford wasn't the kind of actor to sit in a trailer while stunt doubles handled the action. He performed about 90% of Indy's stunts, from cracking the whip to being dragged under a moving truck. During the famous truck chase, Ford actually clung to the hood while bouncing across the desert road. Spielberg said Ford's stunt commitment gave the movie a raw energy that no double could replicate, though it left the crew holding their breath more than once. 4. The sound of the boulder came from a car. Sound designer Ben Burtt had to get creative with effects. For the boulder chase, he recorded the sound of a car rolling down a gravel driveway in neutral. Layered with some heavy rock tumbling effects, it became the unforgettable rumble that chased Indy down the tunnel. Like many sounds in the movie, the snake hisses. The whip cracks. What you're hearing is pure movie magic stitched together from everyday items. 5. The film's snakes were very real. When Indy falls into the Well of Souls, he comes face to face with thousands of slithering snakes. Production couldn't find enough real snakes at first, so they started adding harmless creatures like legless lizards and hose stand-ins. Eventually, they gathered over 6,000 live snakes for the set. The crew even had to bring in more cobras from around Europe. To make matters worse, the heat from the lights kept the snakes restless. Spielberg later joked that it was the creepiest set he had ever directed on. 6. That cobra scene was a camera trick. One of the most terrifying shots in The Well of Souls shows Indy face to face with a cobra. Ford looks like he's only inches away, but there was actually a sheet of glass between him and the snake. You can spot the reflection if you look closely in HD versions. This clever safety trick let Spielberg capture the suspense while keeping Ford from a potentially venomous bite. 7. The monkey Nazi salute was pure luck. Remember the pet monkey in Cairo that gives a tiny Nazi salute? It wasn't planned. The monkey was simply reaching up for a treat being dangled off camera. Spielberg thought it looked hilarious and kept it in the final cut. To sell the gag, the filmmakers dubbed in a little Heil Hitler voice effect. That single moment turned the monkey into one of the most unexpectedly memorable side characters in the film. 8. The Cairo marketplace fight was rewritten on the spot. In one of the movie's funniest moments, A sword-wielding assassin twirls his blade at Indy only for Indy to pull out his gun and shoot him. Originally, Spielberg had choreographed a long fight sequence, but Ford was sick with dysentery that day and didn't have the energy for a complicated stunt. He suggested, "Why don't I just shoot him?" Spielberg loved it, and the scene became one of the most iconic comedy beats in action movie history. 9. The whip took months to master. Indy's whip isn't just a prop, it's practically his sidekick. To get it right, Ford trained for weeks under stunt coordinator Glenn Randall and whip expert Terry Leonard. By the time filming began, Ford could crack the bullwhip convincingly, even using it to snag props on cue. Spielberg said Ford's commitment to mastering the whip made the character feel more authentic, instead of it looking like just another Hollywood gimmick. 10. Harrison Ford injured his knee during filming. While shooting in Tunisia, Ford tore a ligament in his knee during one of the action sequences. Instead of stopping production for surgery, he decided to tough it out and kept performing his own stunts. Crew members were amazed as he continued sprinting, climbing, and fighting through pain, refusing to slow down. Spielberg later said Ford's grit added to the rugged realism of Indy because he really was pushing through injuries just like the character would. 11. Spielberg filmed much of the movie like a television show. To keep costs down, Spielberg adopted a quick shooting style, more like television than Hollywood blockbusters. Instead of setting up multiple camera angles for each shot, he often stuck to one or two setups and moved on. The entire movie was filmed in just 73 days, which was lightning fast compared to most epics of the time. Spielberg later admitted that this approach kept the film feeling lean and punchy, just like the adventure serials that inspired it. 12. Alfred Molina's first film role involved tarantulas. British actor Alfred Molina made his big screen debut in Raiders, playing Indy's ill-fated guide Satipo. His very first day on set required him to be covered in dozens of live tarantulas. At first, the spiders wouldn't move, making the scene look fake. The crew solved this by putting a single female spider on his shoulder, which got the males crawling instantly. Molina later joked that this was his true welcome to Hollywood moment. 13. The famous truck drag was a homage to old westerns. The sequence where Indy is dragged behind a speeding truck was inspired by stuntman Yakima Canutt's work in John Ford's westerns. Stunt coordinator Terry Leonard adapted the trick for Harrison Ford, who insisted on doing much of it himself. Ford was dragged along the road on a specially designed rig that kept him just inches off the ground. It was incredibly dangerous, but paid off with one of the most pulse-pounding scenes in the movie. 14. The exploding plane nearly killed a stuntman. In the desert airstrip fight, Indy battles a massive German mechanic beside a spinning plane. The finale of the scene has the plane exploding into a fireball. During filming, stuntman Glenn Randall was knocked down by the blast and nearly killed by flying debris. Luckily, he walked away with only minor injuries. Spielberg kept the explosion in the final cut, giving the scene an extra layer of brutal realism. 15. The Ark's lid was almost impossible to lift. The Ark of the Covenant prop was built to look ancient and incredibly heavy. But the golden lid actually was heavy. It took several crew members to hoist it during filming. This added a dose of realism when the Nazis struggled to pry it open. Spielberg often encouraged these happy accidents, believing that small struggles made the film feel more authentic. 16. The film revived the career of Lawrence Kasdan. George Lucas tapped screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan to write the script after working with him on The Empire Strikes Back. Kasdan initially wasn't sure how to approach the pulpy material, but he ended up creating a screenplay that balanced humor, danger, and romance. Raiders' success launched Kasdan as one of Hollywood's top screenwriters, and he went on to write classics like Return of the Jedi and The Big Chill. 17. The map room scene used real sunlight. The moment where Indy pinpoints the Ark's location using the Staff of Ra was achieved with clever timing. Instead of faking the beam of sunlight with studio lighting, the crew designed the set so that actual sunlight shone through at the right angle. The effect was filmed on location in Tunisia, giving the sequence its authentic glow. It's a perfect example of Spielberg's blend of practical effects and natural cinematography. 18. Karen Allen brought a tomboy energy to Marion. When casting Marion Ravenwood, Spielberg wanted someone who could stand toe-to-toe with Ford's rugged energy. Karen Allen was chosen because she projected a mix of toughness and charm. Allen leaned into Marion's tomboy personality, refusing to play her as a typical damsel in distress. Her chemistry with Ford crackled on screen, making Marion one of the most memorable heroines of the era. 19. The film's budget was surprisingly modest. Despite its epic feel, Raiders was made on a budget of about $20 million. By Hollywood standards, even in 1981, that was considered fairly lean. Spielberg's efficient directing style and Lucas's insistence on keeping things tight helped keep costs under control. The gamble paid off. The film grossed nearly $400 million worldwide, becoming one of the highest-grossing movies of its decade. 20. The crew hid their initial doubts about the film. While making Raiders, not everyone on the crew believed it would be a hit. Some thought it was too pulpy, too over-the-top, or too risky compared to the safer studio projects of the era. But once dailies started coming in those thrilling action beats, Harrison Ford's charisma and Spielberg's confident pacing doubts quickly vanished. By the time it premiered, the crew knew they had helped make something special, not just a hit movie, but the birth of an icon. And there you have it, 20 things you never knew about Raiders of the Lost Ark. Over 40 years later, the film still feels just as thrilling and adventurous as when it first hit theaters. Spielberg and Lucas set out to revive old pulp serials, but in doing so, they created one of the most iconic heroes in movie history. What's amazing is how much of the film's magic came from chance improvised moments, happy accidents, and practical tricks that still hold up today. From Harrison Ford's commitment to Karen Allen's toughness, John Williams' unforgettable score, and those groundbreaking effects, Raiders was lightning in a bottle. It didn't just entertain, it redefined adventure, filmmaking, and inspired generations of storytellers. Indiana Jones became more than a character. He became a cultural legend. Thanks for joining me on this journey into movie history. If you liked uncovering the secrets of Raiders of the Lost Ark, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around here on Fade to Fact. Until next time, keep the fedora handy, the whip close by, and remember, fortune and glory, kid. Fortune and glory.